Hi, my name is Kerrie-ann and my partner is Sarah Jane. Our presentation is on the tennis forehand ground stroke. We will cover an overview of tennis, the biomechanical analysis of the chosen skill, the physiological analysis, including heart rate data and time motion study. The additional aspect we have chosen is the tennis court surface and how each surface changes the game. Tennis has evolved from a wooden racket era to now playing with either a metal or fiberglass racket with an oversized head. Tennis can be played in a single match, 1 versus 1, or a double match, 2 versus 2. Each match consists of a series of points that form a game. Games form a set and sets form a match. Points are awarded to a player on the team whenever the opponent fails to correctly return the ball within the prescribed dimensions of the court.
The forehand ground stroke is a fundamental shot in tennis. Forehand ground strokes are most commonly used in baseline rallies. This is a shot played after the ball has bounced. For a right-handed player, the stroke starts on the right side of your body and movement continues across your body as racket comes into contact with the ball.
Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is the various phases of the forehand and the kinetic chain. So if we look at the photo to the left, it shows the various phases of the forehand. So if we go through those phases, we start with positioning, so getting into the position. Then we go into a stance, so that involves the rotation of the body through the hips and the shoulders. Then there's the back swing, the swinging of the racket back in a loop shape. Then we got the forward swing. This involves contacting the ball and the extension of the arm completely. And then finally the follow through, which finishes with the racket head over the shoulder. If we look to the right, you can see the kinetic chain of events that occur when performing a forehand ground stroke. So the power generated during the kinetic chain begins at the ground and works its way up the body. The force generated by one body part is transferred in succession to the next. The first segment of the kinetic chain goes from the ground to the knees. This is the phase that involves the feet pushing off the ground. The next phase of the kinetic chain involves both the hips and the core, which is when the body rotation of the body occurs. This force is transferred up to the upper body, so this includes the shoulders, the upper arm, the forearm and the hand, and these are all used during the swing and follow-through stages. The Magnus effect plays a major role in tennis as it influences the movement of the ball in the air. Players utilise the effect of Magnus force to position the ball as part of game strategy. If 3 balls are hit with the same amount of force but different spin, underspin, topspin and no spin, due to Magnus force, as you can see in the diagram on the right, underspin has the highest trajectory and remains in the air longer. A ball with no spin has a higher trajectory than that of a ball hit with topspin, and topspin has the lowest trajectory.
Here we have a video of both Anna Ivanovic and myself performing a forehand ground stroke. I'm just going to play it through and then we will go through and break it down. Alright, so firstly we're going to look at the initial phase of the forehand ground stroke, which is the rotation before the backswing. So in both videos we'll firstly look at Anna Ivanovic's, You can see her body beginning to rotate just here. Her hips and her shoulders, as well as in this one. You can see just about here, you can see the hips and the shoulders opening them up as the racket head goes back. So I'll just show here, shoulders are open and hips have been rotated. So this is until in fully cocked position, so you can see hands out in front to guide the ball. As we keep going back, you can see that the racket head is high on both, so racket head is high. This enables the racket head speed to be generated. As well, in the beginning phases, just about there, and there you can see that the weight is all placed on the back foot. And you can see here the racket head is high. If I go back a little bit on Anna Ivanovic, her racket head is high also when her first foot contact to the ground. Then as they follow through and as the ball comes into contact, you can see it on Anna Ivanovic's, and then on mine as we follow through. You can see here in Anna Ivanovic's that the tip of, oops, sorry, wrong one. The red line represents the tip of the racket and the blue line represents the height of the ball. You can see that the tip of the racket is below the height of the ball, which is how it's meant to be, whereas on mine, the tip of that racket head is slightly higher than the height of the ball. So that's one area of difference. Additionally, you can see that just in about here that my shoulders are I dropped my shoulder, whereas Anna Ivanovic's are more upright. So you can see she's more straight up and down, whereas I'm a little bit more tilted. This can affect my balance. You can also see that I'm a little bit more cramped. So that means that my swing through is not as smooth, and it restricts my movement. So from here, you then will just play. Yep. They swing upwards and forwards to contact. How much forward and how much upward swing you put on the ball depends on the situation you're in. To drive the ball, you want more forward and less upward, whereas for more top spin you want less forward movement and more upward movement. So I guess that's a difference. And then as we finish off here, you can see that they both follow through over the shoulder and over the shoulder, and at the point, the butt of the racket is pointing towards the other side of the net, which is correct. So both of these follow-throughs are fairly correct. I guess also another thing when looking at mine, you can just see that the feet are probably a bit too close together, whereas Anna Ivanovic's got a more open stance, which just improves the balance. So I guess as we just watch through both of these once more, and then so I guess when looking back, I'm not as upright as what Anna Ivanovic is. I'm contacting the ball not quite at the right height. and then I'm too close to the ball, so it's restricting my movement. I drop my shoulder, and my follow through is pretty good. So that's the biomechanical analysis of the forehand ground stroke. To determine the physiological demands of the sport, we're going to look at a dartfish analysis, which will determine the length of rallies and the number of shots per rally. And we will also have a look at a heart rate analysis that will look at the heart rate recorded during match play, and then will be compared to an elite level. When looking at the energy systems used during a tennis match, the anaerobic energy system is the predominant energy system used. Due to the explosive nature of the serve and ground strokes and the rapid changing of direction requiring high anaerobic capacity. High levels of aerobic conditioning is also needed to avoid fatigue. Points last on an average of less than 10 seconds, and there is also the possibility for games to last up to 5 hours. A tennis match includes intermittent anaerobic bouts of exercise of varying intensities, a number of rest periods over a long duration, and it allows the aerobic energy system to aid in the recovery. The dartfish analysis that I undertook looked at rally duration and the number of shots per rally during a game of tennis. When firstly looking at the rally duration and the differences among the elite competition and the sub-elite competition, you can see that in the French Open, which is played on a clay surface, has the longest rally duration. This is due to the much slower court and a lot more time to get to the ball, resulting in longer rallies. The rally duration of the sub-elite is actually the longest. I guess what I could put this down to is that the ball's travelling a lot slower and therefore adding more time. And also the rally duration sort of depends on the playing surface, the playing style, environmental conditions, strategy and motivation, so it can really differ quite a lot. As you can see, there's quite a range in the different rally durations. When looking at the number of shots per rally, it's fairly similar with both the Wimbledon and the sub-elite competition. Majority of the shots played per rally was between 1 to 5. This is probably due to the surface. Grass is quite difficult to play on, and quite often the rallies don't last as long, resulting in less shots per rally. Heart rate data was collected using Polar S400 watch and a Polar heart rate sensor, and this data was generated using the Polar Pro Trainer 5 software. When looking at the results, for an elite trained player, their maximum heart rate ranged from 190 to 200 beats per minute, a minimum heart rate of 94 beats per minute, a heart rate range from 94 to 200 beats per minute, and a mean heart rate of 140 to 160 beats per minute. For a non-elite player, the maximum heart rate was 164 beats per minute, a minimum heart rate of 90 beats per minute, a heart rate range of 90 to 164 beats per minute, and a mean heart rate of 143 beats per minute. The heart rate range and variability during a match, so you can see ranging from 94 to 200 or 90 to 164, represents the start-stop nature of tennis and the explosive bouts that are incorporated. The things to consider when looking at both the elite heart rate and the non-elite heart rate is the fitness levels. Obviously, an elite trained player is going to have a higher fitness level. Work rate can differ. The playing conditions can impact the heart rate, so the playing surface and different playing styles. And additionally, the environmental conditions. Elite players are more likely to adapt to these conditions due to elite conditioning and training in these sort of environments. I guess the things to consider when looking at elite and sub-elite match demands. For an elite competition, there are longer breaks between games and sets. They have ball kids who collect the balls, and the games last for a lot longer, so they play 3 to 5 set matches. Whereas when you look at the sub-elite, their matches quite often are only a set to 6 games. Much slower ball speeds in a sub-elite competition, therefore the movement is much slower. Balls are collected in between shots by the players, and much shorter breaks between games. They don't sit down like in elite competition.
The construction of the tennis court is crucial in determining the behaviour of the game situation and the movement of the player. There are 3 different surfaces I will briefly talk about. On the clay courts, the friction and coefficient of restitution is higher than the grass and hard court surfaces. This results in a higher and relatively moderate bounce. This ultimately gives the player more time to adapt and prepare for their shot compared to receiving a ball on the hard surface. A study showed that it's harder to produce a difficult shot, which then results in longer rallies. The surface itself has the highest frictional coefficient with the ball, but the lowest with the player. The surface has that top dust-like layer, which results in players often sliding across the court. This, in turn, decreases their acceleration speed and ability to change direction quickly. The hard surface court is generally made from asphalt or concrete and are the most commonly available courts as they are easy to maintain. The ball speed is usually at a moderate rate compared to on-grass courts, but still produce a high ball speed. For example, a study showed that the average point lasts less than 10 seconds. The bounce produced is high due to the hard surface producing equal if not greater force when impacted. Due to the surface being even and flat, the ball is considered predictable. In comparison to the hard and clay surface, the grass surface has a flatter hitting average and ball speed is usually quite high. This can allow for better power production, although with less preparation, there may be a decrease in the hitting motion, which could decrease the racket acceleration. As any grass pitch, the more it is played on, the more it wears down. This encourages the ball to become more unpredictable. In relation to player performance, a study produced data that revealed men and women players' performance is affected by the court surface. The number of grass surfaces are diminishing, and the players that perform best on the faster surfaces can be considered to be at a disadvantage. Court surfaces, as well as other factors like sex, ball type, match duration, and style of play, all influence the proportion of aerobic and anaerobic demands on the individual player at an elite level.